Hello, leaders. Welcome to Captain and the Clown. In this episode, we had the pleasure of talking to Ben Balk, the founder and CEO of KindiCare. Ben is a disruptor who has changed the way people find childcare and jobs in the sector and turning the early learning sector on its head. We discuss how COVID was the catalyst for starting KindiCare and the secrets behind such a quick journey from idea to inception. Later in the podcast, we discuss leadership and decision making. We also discuss the challenges of a startup and insights into where recruitment goes wrong, and much more on leadership. We'd love your feedback on our first interview episode. Enjoy.
Why did it count backwards? I don't know, that we're now recording.
What? Hello, Captain.
What do I...
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. So, leadership, life, and everything else.
Yeah.
Ben Balk, CEO and founder of KindiCare. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys, for having me.
Our pleasure. So we'd love to hear how KindiCare started. Give our listeners a background to it.
Yeah, so the story of how KindiCare started really came out of a market need or problem we experienced as a family ourselves. So, we've got two young daughters. We went through the childcare journey, and I watched my wife going through it, my wife Jelini, and she held a spreadsheet of, the 6 centres we'd applied to, what their ratings were, phone numbers, because we needed to constantly chase them to try and see, whether we had a place or where we were at on the wait list, because she was going back to work. And it just seemed a completely outdated and inefficient way to actually find things, particularly when people are used to sophisticated marketplaces for everything from real estate to booking a hotel. There just doesn't seem to be that level of technology in the education and care markets, which is why we just started to build KindiCare.
Wow. Out of the need.
Jelini sounds very smart.
Yeah.
Yes, it was certainly her idea. And, a big part of how KindiCare started, I'd been researching the market for a while, and originally I was looking at the opportunities on the business side in the childcare management software space. But when I came back to look at the market again when COVID hit, I had a successful consulting business that, largely was focused on mergers and acquisitions and strategy consulting. And of course, with COVID, all of the work sort of dried up very quickly. And so after 6 weeks of twiddling my thumbs, I re-looked at the idea behind KindiCare and the issues and just started building the business.
You said you were in mergers and acquisitions, but coming up with this idea doesn't just come, not everyone can do it. So what is your background that you were able to develop this product? And do you have a lot of IT knowledge? Like, what's your experience prior to this?
Yeah, so I've always been working for technology companies in product sales and marketing roles. So, I had experience in building largely B2B products. And so KindiCare is the first business that I've pursued that is, a two-sided marketplace where you're dealing with a B2C audience and a consumer audience as well. My background, I guess, in product and looking at things from a market problem point of view and just pragmatically, how do you solve that and make that a better journey? But, unlike, I guess, some other elements of the market or some marketplaces where I feel that they sometimes get it wrong is you have to treat the customer on each side equally. So it doesn't matter if the consumer is not the one paying the bill and it's the business side that actually pays for it. You've got to ensure that the experience is a great experience for both sides.
Mm. So you're a leader because you're the CEO of the company that you've founded. Were you a leader in your previous roles?
Yeah, I've held senior leadership roles. Before I started my consulting company, I held, product sales and marketing senior leadership roles in, everything from private equity owned businesses to ASX 100 or 200 listed businesses. Of course, in those sort of roles, you are leading large teams of people.
So how does it differ, leading in an organisation where it's a job and leading when you're a founder?
So, it's more personal when you're a founder because it's not just a job. When you face adversity, when you're a leader within a corporate environment, there's a lot more support you can draw on within an organisation. But at the end of the day, if you go home and the task doesn't get done or you've lost one particular person, it's not as critical as what it is in a startup environment where every decision kind of matters. And leadership's also, I think, very different because rather than taking on the leadership style or the culture of the organization, which you kind of almost get forced to adapt to in a way and sometimes operate differently to what you naturally would as a human, being a founder and CEO of my own business, I run the business like I am as a person. You know, so it feels much more natural then, and I can lead in the style that works for me, and then, you know, engage people and have people in the business who are willing to work with that style.
So did you find you felt constrained when you're a leader in an organisation compared to your own business?
Absolutely, because you're often getting second guess, you know, what you think might be the right decision. And it's not to say that it'll always be, you know, the right decision. But, you know, at least you make a decision you feel is right based on your judgment. And if you've got people second guessing that in another environment, or if there's other political agendas at play, particularly in large corporates, you know, you can often be left not being able to lead or do what you want as a business leader within the organisation or within your remit because of the constraints of the organisation itself.
So without those constraints, and it's your own baby, is there a process or methodology you use for decision making?
So I'm a very data-driven person. You know, and within KindiCare, we've built a lot of capability to capture data and understand user behaviour, to understand, you know, the actual customer journey on both sides, to understand what's important. So, you know, we might have a hypothesis as a business, or I might have a hypothesis from a product point of view about what I think will work, or what's the right market or the right pivot to go after as we chase product market fit. But ultimately, you know, you use data to make that decision. So even if we decide to create a new function as an example, we'll build it and we'll put it to market, but we'll actually measure the success of it to understand whether that was actually a meaningful feature or not. And that's how you make sure that the platform or the business doesn't become bloated with technology that's not relevant. You know, you've got to own your mistakes and go, well, that was a good idea, but it's not working or it's not used for whatever reasons. And if it's not used, you know, retire it off and move on.
So you can be more agile.
You can be definitely more agile. And, you know, with being in a startup environment, being my business, I mean, you know, you always take calculated risks in any role, whether you're in a corporate environment or whether you're running your own business. But, you know, I don't have to worry about, you know, a program governance committee around capital or approval processes or, you know, from offshore or even onshore within an organization. I can assess the risk knowing everything I do about the business and make the right call at the right time based on the data I've got at hand. If you get new data in the future that shows that that decision was wrong for any reason, at least you haven't had a period of indecision, and you don't have that, you know, 2 or 3 month lag in some cases to do what you want to try and actually see if it works. And so there's a lot of resources wasted in larger organizations just with trying to get stakeholders on board and trying to build engagement or trying to build consensus instead of someone actually just making the call based on the information. Decision making in a large business is complex because of the size of organizations. You know, the reason that startups and come into a sector and often disrupt it is because of one thing that's very common in organizations is, you know, I guess beliefs that end up developing. So people will make an assumption in an organization, and particularly if they're in a leadership position, even if it's not founded in fact or proven, it gets repeated enough times that that assumption actually drives the business, and any new people coming into the organization are led to believe that's the way, or this is the way a market is because of X or Y. And so, you know, and depending on how well people within an organization are open to new ideas or to being challenged depending on the culture, that can really affect where the business ends up long term. So you might not see the impacts in the next 12 months, but, you know, in 3 or 5 years' time, an organization could lose a lot of market share because they didn't see what was right in front of them or actually get the empirical evidence for the decision making that they're doing.
So being not from industry, not from that sector, has actually given you a leg up because you can see the issues from the outside without the bias.
That's right. So, you know, when we came into the childcare sector, we spoke to a lot of early learning providers. We looked at all the feedback from parents, and as parents ourselves, understanding the journey that we went through to look at, well, how do you make this a better experience? But given the lack of, you know, education technology and technology that exists in, you know, care and education industries globally, you know, you don't look then within the industry at what the competitors in the industry who are already underserving the market are doing. You look at what other organizations are doing. So, for example, one of the key differences with the KindiCare app compared to other search platforms out there is that we don't just start with suburb and postcode, and that's the start of your entire search experience. We built the ability to search by brand, by centre name, by keyword. So there's lots of different paths for people to find their results. But we also looked at things like, for example, Uber Eats, where I could be anywhere in the world that has Uber Eats as, operating, and sitting in a hotel at 11 o'clock at night and see all of my food options by major brands, by types of cuisine, everything contextualized immediately for me around, that particular area. And, someone searching for childcare for the first time doesn't know what quality looks like, where they should be looking, what the types of care available are, and what value for money looks like or what they should be paying. So with KindiCare, when they open the app, even before they've done a search, they're shown who are the top brands, what are the best rated ones, what are the ones closest to them, who are the newest services in the area. So they're at least given a range of options and can actually be taken through the journey, never having any experience in that sector before.
So you're the Uber Eats of childcare.
I guess so.
I like it. So you started out as searching for childcare and an app that's going to help people do that. But you've pivoted to being a portal where people can find jobs in the industry. How do you go from targeting one aspect of the industry to then pivoting almost completely to a new business, I guess?
So we always saw the gap in the market around, the existing portals and how people find jobs in a specific industry. And a lot of people that work in the childcare sector are obviously going to remain in the childcare sector. So, they're going to be consistently looking for roles in this environment.
When you started out the app?
Yeah, we actually, way back to 2018, when I first started looking at the childcare sector, we identified careers as one of the things that could be done better. But I guess the real pivot for us, and the reason that we started working on this with such vigour, was, customers were telling us that leads from parents looking for childcare isn't necessarily a problem at the moment. Their biggest challenge is educators and staff. And the more educators and staff that they have, the more leads they can accept from parents, because they've got the ability to obviously, fill more vacancies within their centres, because there are very strict child staff ratios in Australia for childcare, which is completely appropriate. So, if you're down one educator, that could mean, 10 kids that you can't actually have in your centre because you don't have enough staff. We didn't set out to do KindiCare jobs as, here's just a little add-on. We set out to build the best experience we could possibly create and invested appropriately to do that. And we did it in record time. So, from ideation of the pivot and decision that we were going to pivot to jobs as an additional capability of the platform and of the marketplace, to delivery took 4 months.
4 months. Whereas that would take probably 4 years in a large organisation.
Large organisations that I've worked with previously, you go through a business case round, you've got to wait for a board meeting, it might take you 4 months just to get approval that, yes, we're happy for you to pursue the idea, let alone actually just get on with it and build it.
So we talk a lot about leadership in this podcast, and a leader is somebody that you choose to follow. A manager is somebody who's been given authority over you. And we talk about the character traits that make somebody the type of person you'd want to follow. You've no doubt had a lot of great mentors and leaders that you've looked up to. What would you say are the most important characteristics of a leader, somebody that you would be inspired to follow?
So I think, over your career and as you age and obviously go through your path in life, the most important thing is actually finding people at any stage that you can learn something from. So, through my career, I've had mentors and leaders and colleagues and people that I've learnt a lot from. And you might find over time that, your skill base and your experience surpasses people that you've learnt from in the past, which means, they don't provide the same sort of value from a mentoring or leadership point of view. You kind of outgrow certain people that you meet through your life. But the most important thing is at each stage of your life, you've got people that you're learning from. The people I've always most respected that I've worked with are ones that are a bit more selfless. I mean, they're driven, but there's almost like a higher purpose to what they're doing. So it's not about the money, for example, or it's not about their position in the organisation and climbing the corporate ladder as being the most important thing. It's about doing the job right, to solving problems, being passionate about what they're trying to achieve. money should really be the byproduct of a job well done in anything. And I mean, that goes from running a startup, KindiCare, who knows where we'll end up. But, if we solve problems well and if we provide value for clients, the revenue will continue to grow and the business will be valuable. And whether I'm the right person to be running this business in 5 years, or whether it's passing on the baton to someone else, or whether it's going after a different market, you never know until you get there. But integrity is a really important thing, and having trust in the person. And that I think comes back to what are their personal motivations. So, I think Paul Keating once said, people always do what's most important to them at any point in time. But the great leaders, yes, they'll be focused on the most important issue, but it's less about them and more about what they're actually trying to achieve.
So you're quite a visionary yourself, considering what you've created in such a short amount of time. And so you've looked up to people who have got a purpose, a drive. They're aiming for something, and they think bigger than their role. They think bigger than themselves. I like that.
Yeah, so, and, that sort of comes through in them being a bit more entrepreneurial. They'll be a bit more flexible in decision making. Within reason, they're willing to accept risk and, make the right decision despite what, blowback or pressure they might get in return. So when you right or wrong, when you believe something is the right thing to do, there has to be integrity behind that. You can't fold in the face of opposition.
Yeah.
And, no person building a startup or no person really helping a company succeed can be the type of person that just backs down at the first opposition to fall into line.
So we love talking about confidence, and how a confident leader is somebody who will make the right decision, not the popular decision. Sometimes the popular decision is the right decision, but it's about knowing when that is the case, whether you're making the right decision based on principles, based on vision, based on purpose, or are you making the decision based on being liked?
Well, I think this is where there's a lot of distrust of political leaders in the current environment. How much do we see, instead of making the right decision for the next 20 years, people are making the short-term decision about selling a public asset to get the return to buy a stadium to, get the next round of election votes, or changing their position from what they believe because it's tested in media or they've had blowback. Right or wrong, you have to stand by your convictions and what you're trying to do. And if, you're a political leader and people don't stand behind that and don't see that vision for the country or aren't aligned with you, isn't it better, rather than to hold on to power, like we've seen some politicians do, not naming any ex-Prime Minister, than actually doing the right thing?
Are you talking about Anita Keating's husband?
Integrity is really important, and you can't think the population's dumb. People see authenticity and they will see through you if it's not a genuine experience.
So Ben, what do you consider to be your superpower? What's your biggest strength?
Your leadership superpower.
Look, I think the ability to articulate an idea and get people to follow it. And I'm a product guy. I love...
You're an influencer. Hashtag influencer, Ben.
I don't see myself as an influencer or anything special, to be honest. I mean, I love Lego as a kid. KindiCare just did a Lego competition. That's partly because I love Lego. But, I was always a builder from a very young age, and I love solving problems. And so, for me, I never knew I'd end up being, I guess, in product development or product management in my career, and then end up founding a startup to boot.
The bipolar startup?
A bipolar startup. I mean, it is quite a journey that nothing can really prepare you for. But, there's just that drive in me to solve problems and do it in an elegant way. And I can't describe it any other way than that. That's how my mind works. And I just feel I'm a natural on creating products that work for the market.
So people who are out there thinking about starting their own business, founding, what
think again. Think again.
Keep your life. So what lessons would you give to people who are thinking about starting their own business?
It's not glamorous.
It's not glamorous.
So, I think people look at startups, or they see a business that's been successful, and, typically it's a overnight success, 10 years in the making. The journey of building a business is hard. I mean, it's incredibly hard, and from a it's just all consuming. So, I mean, look, I've had senior corporate roles with serious pressure behind it, but nothing compares to building a startup where you're responsible for every aspect of it, and it's your baby, because it's so personal, but at the same time, it requires every ounce of energy and focus. So, the first thing I'd say to people is, be prepared for the sacrifices that will come. You will lose friendships. You will see the worst version of yourself and the best version of yourself through the process. It will become addictive and all-consuming. And if the business doesn't come first over everything else, health, family, recreation time, you name it, you won't succeed. And I know that sounds horrible, but it's what it really takes. There's no idea of I can clock off at 6 o'clock or maybe 9 o'clock's a long night. If you have to be up till 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 days in a row to get a product released, or, because you've got media attention on you and you have to respond, at a moment's notice, despite what your other plans are, you end up doing everything.
So you've been going at a cracking pace for some time now. What are you doing to look after yourself? Because if it's like the old adage when you're on a plane, Michelle, I'm sure, knows this very well, that if you don't put your gas mask or your oxygen. Gas mask, yes, it does, yes. Yeah, put your oxygen mask on first. You can't help anyone else. So what are you doing to help yourself so that you can continue this hectic pace?
The hard thing is when you need a break, or when you've hit the wall, you've often got no choice. So, it's a bit like having kids in a way. If your kids are sick and it's 4 a.m. and they're vomiting and you need to get up and you're exhausted, you have no choice. So it's that kind of thing. Whereas if you're in a job, what's the worst that can happen? You might lose your job. It's very different if it's your business and, you've got critical deliverables. So, as much as possible, I try and talk with advisors, with friends, and have conversations about issues that we might be facing I might be facing on a personal or a business level.
So you've got a group of leaders that you reach out to?
Well, group of
mentors.
A group of people that have been through similar situations, or friends that I've known for a long time, to keep a bit grounded. But getting exercise where you can. I try as much as possible to do, a 10K walk every day.
Well, that's
to clear my head.
That's significant.
Much to my wife's annoyance, sometimes that's 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's worried about me walking on the street. And I have been pulled up by the police a couple of times in winter whilst wearing a hoodie, wondering what I'm doing out at that time of the morning.
So I'm going off a bit what Guy was saying about how you're taking care of yourself. How is your work-life balance going? And how are you ensuring that there is some balance and it's not tipping way too much the other way?
Look, one of the things that I have to do, I have a diary booking on a Friday night to make sure that it's family dinner and movie night with my girls. Whilst it's hard to get work-life balance, at least with, working from a home office, and our staff is 100% remote. Everyone works from wherever's most convenient. It's 100% flexible working. So what that does afford me is, yes, I might be working till 3 o'clock in the morning, but I can do the pick up and drop off of the kids. I make sure I spend time. I try and cook the girls' dinner. So I'm the only cook in the house. My wife is good at so many things, but other than 2-minute noodles, there's not much in the cooking department that she can really do. So, but that's important for me because I love food, and being able to cook a meal for the kids and watch them enjoy that. Then they have bath time, etc. And once they've hit the sack, I'm back off to work for another few hours, or as long as it takes. So, I have no work-life balance. I don't think it's fair to call it that way, and I don't think any founder of a startup would say that they've got work-life balance, but I think you try and make it work. And I'm very lucky that I have an incredibly supportive wife who picks up and shoulders the load, even though she has a high-profile corporate job. She picks up the load knowing where I'm at with the business and the effort that I need to put into it.
So does Jelini, do you check in with Jelini as far as, because it was basically her problem that you came up with a solution, or you both came up with a solution. Do you check in with her often or occasionally about how the market solution is going and how she is as a parent, excuse me, and how she is as a consumer, basically, although your girls are older now, to how it fits in with the vision?
Yeah, so Jelini gets involved with ideas around the business, but not involved on a day-to-day basis. I mean, she came up with the original problem set, but I guess just like all things, our business is now scaled to a point where we've got so many inputs coming in from parents, and there's 85,000 people that have installed the KindiCare app since we launched. We have 100,000 sessions a month between app and website of families who are looking for early learning services. So we have a big pool of people to ask, as well as a huge wealth of data around what products and services and features and functions are being used on our platform. So, where Jelini's input often comes in is just the gut feel of how do I feel about a certain thing as a mum.
I want to go back to your 10-kilometre walk in the mornings. Do you find, because that's a fair amount of meterage that you're covering, no doubt, unless you're an Olympic walker and you do it in a short amount of time. Do you find that is the time of day when most of your insights come to you, your ideas, or do you find it a way of just turning off?
Yeah, look, I try and do phone calls on the walk because I think better while I'm moving, and so much of my time is spent at the desk because of the nature of our business. So, conversations are much better done when I'm walking, and I've probably just completely killed the floorboards in our home office because I'll pace backwards and forwards when I'm on the phone. So, I mean, if I'm going to go for a walk, I try and do a decent walk. So it's a good time to either, if it's the middle of the night and I'm doing a late night walk, it's a good time to reflect and think or just decompress, listen to some music, just do something and be out and have some fresh air and move. If it's early in the day, I'll usually be on the phone to either advisors or investors or, people that I need to speak to, even customers in some cases, and I'll let them know as I'm huffing and puffing up a hill that I'm out walking, so that they're aware. But when I ran my consulting business, I found that, the most efficient use of time. So I can get exercise at the same time as I'm still working.
I don't use the term work-life balance myself. I actually deplore it. I think it's the wrong term, because what it does is it implies that your life stops when you go to work. I see work as a part of life, and it's going to just integrate the two.
It's a part of life if you love what you do.
And do you love what you do?
And I love what I do every day. Like, despite the challenges, I mean, I believe in what we're doing, and I absolutely love what I do. So, and again, it goes to that. There's a greater driver. I mean, I could have taken corporate roles earning a lot more money with a lot less stress and pressure, but it's not about that. So, for me, it's, solving the problem and driving it and being able to build something that's truly mine. So, but I saw a post on LinkedIn, I think it was actually this morning, around, people that stay extra hours or work through the night to get something done or achieve a task. That shouldn't be worn as a badge of honour. You need work-life balance. And I don't subscribe to that view at all. I mean, I understand if you're an employee and are you being rewarded appropriately for that, but I think it comes from a greater driver. I mean, if you love what you do, even if you're an employee, you'll go the extra mile because you believe in what you're doing and you want to succeed and you want to see it done.
Oh, we definitely subscribe to that, it's the thing that gets you up early in the morning, a couple of hours before most people wake up. It's the thing that keeps you going late at night, and it drives you. It's definitely a passion.
There's plenty of people that will do whatever for a buck, and I'm not one of those people. So, when I look to people that I feel I can learn from, or I see as, people I'd look up to or mentors, they've typically had that trait.
And then, as you said before, when you go past them, you've learned everything. And a great leader should inspire those that they lead to become better than themselves. That's ultimately the role of a leader.
Absolutely. So, and this comes back to your point, Guy, around confidence. So if someone's confident, they're not worried about hiring someone that's more capable than them. Like, if I was going out tomorrow to hire a chief data officer for the organisation, I would want someone who's more capable than me, that could bring new ideas, that could challenge what we've done and do it better. Because why would you get someone that was less than?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just going to get
exactly the same
to make yourself feel superior.
Yeah.
There is no point to that.
No, exactly.
You always want to surround yourself with people that you could see succeeding better. And I mean, if we're, I'm 43 now. I've still got a ways to go in my career. But if I was looking at someone that I'm employing to be who's younger than me or even older than me, you still want them to be better.
Yeah.
You want them to be better at what they do than what you are.
And Henry Ford is very famous for, and I hope it's true because it's on the internet, so it's got to be true. Henry Ford is famous for saying, "I wasn't a brilliant man, but I surrounded myself with them." So you obviously subscribe to the same model, that you surround yourself with people who have got.
Yeah, no one's got all the answers.
No.
And so, and the other trait I think of a good leader is someone that you can actually listen and talk to. I mean, I'd say to my team members, I'll sometimes have very fixed views and I'm always happy to be challenged, but, you've got to have some backup or some proof or some reasoning behind what you're challenging me with. Yeah. And I'm always open because, if we take an idea and someone's got a better one, then it creates a better product and it creates a better experience for our customers on both sides of the marketplace. So why would you not want that? No one contains all the innovation in their head. Yeah. No one's got all of the answers. And so you need a strong and capable team around you, and you want people that can challenge you.
Well, I think we've learned a lot about leadership today, but I'd like to throw one more question. Is there anything else, any advice you could give to leaders out there? You've now 43 years. Probably at the start of your leadership career, considering, you've just founded your own company and the headway that you've made in such a very short amount of time. What's one lesson you can leave our leaders that are listening?
Lesson. Trust your people.
Yeah.
Hire the right people with the right motivations from you personally in hiring them, and then trust them to do the job.
Simple. Love it.
So, Ben, not many people know, or no one would know, that I am actually an employee of you. And you took a risk hiring an ex-airline captain, a retired airline captain, into an IT startup business. So, why?
I ask myself that so many times. Look, actually, again, it's one of these hypotheses. I looked at people that were being affected by COVID, that were going to be displaced as a result. So highly qualified, highly capable people, with good technical skills, with good management skills.
But again, why?
So I just, people have, I guess from, my lens has changed a bit over the years. And so, Australia tends to have this, how do I put it, this precedent-based recruitment. So you can't get a job easily as a chief technology officer unless you've previously held the title of a chief technology officer. It doesn't seem to matter what you really achieved. It's how well you spin it in the interview, and do you have that title on your resume? So, people are less hired on their outcomes and skills and capabilities than what they are on what's on the resume and how well they can actually position themselves in an interview. So, I didn't come from the childcare industry. But I've worked across a number of different sectors in my life, whether it be enterprise resource planning software in, hard goods in consumables, through to, information technology companies like Equifax and Experian, etc. And, you sort of learn that it's the skills that you have as a person that can translate across industries that are most valuable. So when I looked at, Michelle, you coming from an aviation background, I went, one of the few female captains in your industry, flying, aircraft in a high-pressure job with simulations and everything else you have to go through, particularly being a female in a male-dominated industry. I went, well, she's got to be capable and handle a lot of things. And being in a startup environment, because you were employee number one, you have to be prepared to work across a whole range of areas, whereas people that are used to being in a role, in a business, they're usually in a box with a particular scope of work. And that's not what startup is like.
And do you find they come in with a lot of cognitive bias, which means that they're always going to continue to do things the way and think the way they've always thought? But in a startup, you need to be a lot more agile, a lot more open to lots of ideas. Do you find that's the case?
I think regardless of the willingness of the person to try and help out, depending on their personal character, if you've been in a role in a larger organisation, there's still this bit of that's not my job, or that's not my area, or that's someone else. And there's no such thing when you're building a business from the ground up, And even for me personally, I'm hands-on tools. If I have to curate 80,000 lines of data to do our next pricing load and I'm up, till 5 a.m. doing it, it's me sitting there doing it because there's no one else to rely on. You can't just say that's not my problem. The job needs to be done no matter what. And you have to do whatever it takes. So you kind of lose that, position of, well, that's beneath me, or, I'm this senior and I shouldn't have to do that. It's all hands on deck. So you want to work with people that fundamentally, firstly, have that character trait of, I'm willing to do whatever it needs to be done for the business to be successful.
Mm. And so how can people find more information about KindiCare?
Really easy. Go to KindiCare.com or go to either Google Play Store or Apple App Store and search for KindiCare or Childcare and download the KindiCare app.
So if you're searching for childcare for your young children, or if you're looking for a job in the industry,
and you want the best experience,
go to KindiCare.
Go to KindiCare.
And Benjamin Balk, thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
You're welcome.
So, Michelle, where can they find us?
CaptainandTheClown.com.
Where you'll find links to our websites for keynote speaking and corporate training.
Yes, that's CaptainandTheClown.com.
Well, that was fun.
That was fun.
You're such a clown.
The clown.
Lady Captain. There we go.
And who's going to listen to this? Maybe our mums.
Thanks, Mum.